Verstappen has been front and center in the build-up to the 2026 Nürburgring 24 Hours. But the number 16 Scherer Audi of Haase stole the spotlight in their first encounter of the season when he took the fight to the four-time Formula One world champion. And in this final race before the all-important Nürburgring 24 Hours, this epic rivalry is once again rekindled, with both teams and drivers vying to mark their territory. But before we go any further, I want to address the tragic passing of Juha Miettinen in the N24 Qualifiers Race number 1 on April 19th. I can't imagine the kind of pain his family, friends, teammates, and competitors are feeling. Juha was the truest embodiment of a sports car racer. The self-proclaimed Nürburgring Liebhaber secured 6 class victories and a further 20 podiums in his 56 races at the Nürburgring. Though he is gone from this world, he will certainly never be forgotten. His spirit lives in our hearts, and his soul will forever bless the Nürburgring. Juha, may you rest in peace. With a somber hush over the paddock, the grid is set for today's race as the drivers climb aboard their machines. And I have to say, the ability for these superhuman drivers to disassociate from the tragedy from the day before and solely focus on the task at hand will never cease to amaze me. As they leave the grid, the number 45 Ferrari of Marshall starts from pole position, with yesterday's pole-winning BMW just behind. Haase sits in third in his number 16 Audi, with Preining's Grello number 911 in fourth, and Verstappen rounding out the top 5. And as they prepare to take the green flag, the peril that could befall any of them is the farthest thing from their mind. The pace car pulls into the pit lane, and the number 16 Audi is tucked up underneath the rear wing of that number 45 Ferrari, ready to pounce at a moment's notice. Just behind, Max has left a little gap to those 2 cars out front, but Haase is absolutely shadowing this number 45 Ferrari. Finally, the green flag drops and the Ferrari is away as the Audi gets a good launch, but so does that number 911 Porsche of Preining, who already makes it 3 wide past the second place BMW. As they hit the brakes into turn 1, they are still 3 wide with the BMW going deep, and Max following in the wheel tracks of that number 911 Porsche as he goes around the outside of the BMW now up into 4th place, with the Porsche and Audi going side by side behind the race-leading Ferrari. Haase is on the outside but does not yield as they go side by side through the second corner of the race, as Preining has the leverage around the outside and makes his way past the Audi driver and looks for a way past Marshall and his number 45 Ferrari, who defends to the inside, with Preining now looking around the outside. Into Dunlop curve, he brakes late as they go side by side for the race lead. Haase is deep as Verstappen hugs the inside line. He puts down the power as the Audi is just ahead of this number 3 Mercedes, and Verstappen flashes his lights to let that 16 car know that he wants to get past as soon as possible. Out front, the Porsche driver continues to chase down that 45 Ferrari as Haase now has a run but nowhere to go. Haase uses all of the runoff, but that Porsche just has enough of a gap to stay ahead through the exit. Just behind, Max is in their wheel tracks as that Ferrari out front continues to weave to generate some heat in its tires. Verstappen once again flashes his lights, letting this Audi know that he is not going to wait around too much longer. Through the chicane they go, hopping over both inside curbs as Haase once again looks into the mirrors of that Porsche driver who could not be closer to the leading Ferrari. After finishing their trip around the Grand Prix circuit, they are now on the Nordschleife, and we can look back from this Audi to see the beautiful V10 engine as well as Max's Red Bull liveried Mercedes AMG, who is hunting down this number 16 car. But with the track width being so narrow on the Nordschleife, it is so difficult to overtake as they make their way single file through the Hotzenbach. Haase clips the apex curb on the right, kicking up some dust as he once again clips the curb on the exit as well. As we saw last time out, he is not afraid to maximize the track width and use every single inch of the road to extract all of the performance from his Audi R8. And as they are released from the twisty Hotzenbach section, they continue in a single file line to Flutplatz. And as this long opening lap continues, it is still as you were, with these four making their way through Klostertal and to the scene of yesterday's accident. They come flying into Stahlstrecke and then slam on the brakes, and we can still see the scars from yesterday's accident on that red and white barrier. And as they passed the scene of that tragedy, there wasn't a second thought or a moment's hesitation for any of these drivers, and they didn't even brake a single meter earlier than normal. That, in my eyes, makes these drivers superhuman. As they exit the carousel, Verstappen is still shadowing this Audi's every single move. And with the stint continuing, they make their way through Galgenkopf, which leads onto the long Döttinger Höhe straight. Haase's Audi out front is tucked up just behind that number 911 Porsche. Onto the more than 2 kilometer long straight, this Audi has a phenomenal draft from Preining's Porsche, and Verstappen has a fantastic view of this battle. Haase closes in on the Porsche driver, who is a sitting duck at this point. Preining stays in the middle of the road as Haase pulls the left-hand side and easily blows past the Porsche driver as he hugs now the left-hand side of the road. Preining slots in behind this now second place number 16 Audi of Haase, who is closing in on the number 45 Ferrari of Marschall, as just in the background we see Verstappen come into Tiergarten as well as they make their way through this right-left sequence and onto the Grand Prix circuit. Though Verstappen has been slightly gapped, we know this won't last long as he quickly closes in on the 911 Porsche. Preining just begins to slide back from the Audi as Verstappen hugs a tight line through this left-hander that leads onto the Nordschleife as Preining gets within millimeters of the wall on the exit, but he carries too much speed through the apex of Sabine Schmidt's curve. He runs wide and Verstappen has a massive run on the exit. He looks around the outside, but there is just nowhere to go as the Porsche driver retains third position ahead of Verstappen. And as this lap around the Nordschleife continues, the Porsche driver has built a slight gap to Verstappen, but just up the road, the Audi driver is closing in on that number 45 Ferrari. Into Bergwerk, the Porsche driver takes a really wide entry and line through the corner, but Verstappen holds it tight to the apex as these two drivers use very different techniques to extract performance from their vehicles. Now, unfortunately, we get a little breakup through this section of the track and miss the build-up to the Audi making its way up alongside and then past the number 45 Ferrari for the race lead. And indeed, Verstappen got by the Porsche through that section of track as the two drivers out front were caught in traffic through Mootkurve and now through Klostertal. The top three are nose to tail as they pass a safety vehicle on the right and a slower car on the left-hand side. The Audi now leads the race ahead of the 45 Ferrari with Verstappen in third place, but closing in quickly on the two out front. Now, with this speed that we have seen from that number 16 Audi, Verstappen needs to make quick work of this Ferrari if he wants to stick with Haase and any shot of gaining the race lead. And as we look back underneath the beautiful swan neck rear wing of this R8, we see Haase's competitors tailing his every move. Haase catches a touring car through this fast left-hander and has to hit the brakes and take avoiding action as they now weave their way through this slower traffic. They pass that Toyota, and Haase clears another one through this fast right-hander. Over the crest, we can see another cluster of traffic into Ice Curve. Haase has to take to the curb to make his way past. His exit is compromised and the Ferrari has to hit the brakes as Verstappen now has a run and goes side by side with the Ferrari as he makes his way past up into second place and all over the rear of Haase and his number 16 as they go through this fast double apex right-hander over the crest. Verstappen now in second place and eyeing the race lead. Haase and Verstappen once again at the front of the field and showing why they have earned so much respect from their competitors around this track. Their overtakes were so opportunistic and show how they are always ready to pounce at a moment's notice. But speaking of pouncing, Haase once again pounces on traffic and has to hit the brakes through the apex of that left-hander as Verstappen also takes avoiding action from that slower car. The Audi uses its turn signal and stays to the left-hand side as Verstappen is flashing his lights vigorously, and we see that Ferrari driver is not far behind either as the top four are all still together. Haase once again trapped behind traffic as Verstappen has a huge run but nowhere to go through the fast right-hander. Haase uses every inch of road on the exit, and Verstappen flashes his lights once again as they go through ice curve. You see that BMW uses the exit curve. The Audi moves to the left-hand side to make its way past as Verstappen follows him through, still flashing his lights. In the background, the Ferrari just squeezes that BMW off the track as they go over the jump. Verstappen still tailing this number 16 Audi, with that Ferrari looming large in the number 3's mirrors as well. Verstappen goes airborne once again as they make their way past yet more traffic as Verstappen piles the pressure onto Haase, who is not flinching in his defense of first place. We are witnessing masters at work at the front of this race. Through the Hotzenbach section, we can see Verstappen clips that apex curve on the right-hand side as Haase continues to run his aggressive lines through the corners. Through the exit, Haase clips the apex curve and runs slightly wide over the exit curbing as well, but it doesn't seem to detract too much from his speed on the exit as he still has a slight gap back to Verstappen. They go over the crest and into Flugplatz as Verstappen's front end lifts slightly off the ground, nearly flat out to this double apex right-hander. The Audi catches some traffic and has to take avoiding action as Haase hits the brakes. Verstappen has huge closing speed on the Audi and makes his way around the outside into Schwedenkreuz, past the number 16 car and into the race lead. Haase, with that unfortunate break in traffic, is shuffled down to second place and behind his rival. We hear a squeal of the tires as he pushes to the absolute limit through that right-hander. Haase is not giving up and pushing harder than ever in his pursuit of the 4-time Formula 1 world champion. Down the Donninger Höhe, and he is in the draft and closing in on this number 3 Mercedes. Looking back from Max's car, we can see the Audi creeping closer and closer. Haase pops to the right-hand side as they make their way under the Bilstein Bridge, but he's on the outside as they head into Tiergarten. But Max still has a side draft on the Audi and has leverage as they make their way into the braking zone. He does not lift and reclaims first position as Haase relinquishes second place to the number 3. And with this epic battle continuing, I just want to say how impressive it is not only that Haase is fighting with Max Verstappen, but that he's doing so in an Audi R8. Now, if you have seen my previous videos, you know that I incorrectly predicted the demise of this car after they won the race back in 2024. That's because Audi stopped not only factory, but also customer support of this car. I believed that would spell the demise of this R8, but I am so happy to be proven wrong, and I'm so happy that Scherer Sport has refused to allow this V10 to go silent. So thank you to Scherer Sport, and please continue racing this R8 as long as you possibly can. Max Verstappen clips this apex curb just on the right-hand side there, using the curb on the exit as well to extend the width of the track as Haase continues to push his Audi R8 and the Formula 1 world champion out front. Through ice curve, you hit the brakes late, carry speed to the apex, and then use the curb on the exit. Down through this sweeping section of the course, they approach the jump, and Max gets some air in his Mercedes as the Audi follows his every move. For these drivers, racing around the Nürburgring is more than just an action. It is an instinct that they have ingrained inside of them, as they know where every bump is, where every curb is, and how to smoothly work their way through the slower traffic. But once again on the Donninger Höhe, we can see Haase is in the toe of that Mercedes and ever so slightly inching closer to that race lead. Down the straight, they approach VMAX, and he once again pops to the right-hand side out of the draft. But this time, he is not as far alongside as Verstappen clearly has the inside line and the leverage into this left-hander. And once again, the Audi backs out of the throttle, allowing Verstappen to retain the race lead as they make their way back onto the Grand Prix circuit for another lap. We can see very different lines taken as Verstappen takes a really wide entry and Haase almost does a double apex as he slams on the throttle through the exit. We can see traffic out front for Verstappen as they make their way into the Schumacher S. The traffic stays to the left and Verstappen's run is compromised as he has to back out of the throttle. The Audi has a huge run and pops to the left-hand side as they go side by side into this left-hander. Verstappen once again has the leverage and just about hangs onto the position as he slams the door on the Audi driver, but Haase still has a run and and nearly touches the rear of that Mercedes through the right-hander and onto this long straight. But as they head into the chicane, the Mercedes has the advantage, and with such a short braking zone, it's nearly impossible to overtake at this section of the course. Haase pops his nose into the mirror of that Mercedes, but Verstappen hangs on as he kicks up gravel through the chicane. With 50 minutes of this race complete, they make their way on the Grand Prix circuit, and Max Verstappen stays to the right-hand side and makes his way into pit lane as he actually passes that GT4 car into the pits. Max not wasting any time as he looks to optimize every element of this race. And as he makes his way into his pit box, he is pitting a lap earlier than the Audi. This will give the number 3 a much shorter pit stop and allow them to easily hold on to the race lead. But obviously, this will force them to take a longer pit stop at the end of the race and could hand the advantage to the Audi. So with Max's stop complete, he refires his Mercedes engine and rejoins the pit lane. So although Verstappen is comfortably in a net first place as he exits the pits, the focus of this stint will be about pumping in fast laps and essentially shadowboxing with that number 16 Audi as they try to each build an advantage for the final stint. And right on cue, 1 lap later, Haase also makes his way into his pit box. As we said, this will be a much longer pit stop as Haase jumps out and hands over to Alexander Sims. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Alex as he slides into his seat, I highly recommend checking out my most recent video about the Sebring 12 Hours where he went toe-to-toe in his factory Corvette against the best GTD Pro competition in IMSA. But back to the race at hand, because with his stop complete, Sims returns to action in his number 16 Audi, as we can see that Grello Porsche still in the pit lane, with this number 16 car clearly in second place, but as I mentioned, shadowboxing with that number 3 Mercedes for the race lead. With these two pumping in fast laps and pushing to the absolute limit for the race victory, Verstappen continues on the Grand Prix circuit as he slams the brakes into the chicane. It looks like a clean run, but Verstappen stays to the right-hand side and makes his way into the pit lane. Now, with him shortcutting the lap as he makes his way through the tire bundles back to the front stretch and into pit lane. This lap obviously will not count, but clearly there is some serious issue at the front of his Mercedes. And unfortunately, as he makes his way into his pit box, it is clear that there is significant damage at the front of his car, as we see a slight look of dejection from his face. The team quickly works to push the car back into the garage as Verstappen prepares to exit the car in this qualifying race. After nearly half an hour of hard work, this Mercedes is back on track, with Auer now exiting his pit box. Obviously, this race has not gone to plan, but getting this number 3 car back out on track is critical to learning as much as possible in the build-up to the Nürburgring 24 Hours. And if you want to learn more about this Mercedes driver, Auer, I highly recommend you check out my video from this year's Daytona 24 Hours, where he and his teammates went toe-to-toe for class victory. But with the number 3 now out of contention, the 16 is able to hang on to victory in the final race in the build-up to the Nürburgring 24 Hours. Green raises a fist and cheers as he crosses the line in first place in his Scherer Sport Audi. And I just want to say, if you guys made it this far, thank you so much for watching and so much for supporting. I really, really appreciate it. I really, really appreciate you guys. This was obviously a really tough weekend for us sports car fans. I just wanted to let you guys know that I love you, and I really feel the love and support from you guys too. I really appreciate it. It really means a lot to me. I know this kind of stuff can hit us really hard, and I just want to say that we are all here for each other. I want to give a special shout out to my channel members. Thank you guys so much for the love and support. I love you guys, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.